Hello everybody, my name is Tejas the Almighty. I made a video before this called John Brown, the Doom Guy of Bleeding Kansas. And it was supposed to be one whole video, but I had to break it into two parts because my computer crapped out. But anyway, if you haven't seen the first part, go watch that. But I don't really have a flashing intro for this one, so... This is John Brown, the man who was right all along.
I'm here for you tonight. If you want to keep going, I will keep going tonight. What's up? If you want to keep going, I will keep going tonight. Well, look, it's been love. I love y'all. I go by the name of Drake. Thank you for having me.
Losing his son and his town must have been a tough pill to swallow. Just kidding, Brown was now a bit of a celebrity in the North, and it probably made him forget all about his dead son. People had heard of his actions and thought, damn, this Brown dude is kinda hot. Brown was now the new Katy Perry. Brown moved back to Springfield, Mass. to start his new campaign in 1857. It was time to start scheming again, and he wants to do something way bigger and more violent than Potawatomi. Doing this will require manpower, money, and weapons. Due to Brown's fame, he's able to attain some of these things via donations. He's able to get some money from a group of men called the Secret Six. The Secret Six were kind of like the Avengers, except they didn't have any superpowers and were just a bunch of old dudes. Now that Brown had gotten his money up, it was time to get his funny up. Brown now needed men to help him with his master plan. While Brown was liked by many in the North, he was also disliked by many as well. A lot of people thought he was too violent, so I guess Brown was less like Katy Perry and more like Adam Sandler. Anyway, over the course of 3 years, he's only able to get 21 men to join his campaign. But it doesn't matter, because Brown has a master plan.
Now, the rest of the plan is simple. I fly to the moon. I shrink the moon. I grab the moon. I sit on the toilet. What?
Brown's plan was to raid an armory in Harpers, Ferry, Virginia. How would he do this? Simple. He would cut the communication lines. Then, he would have his men secure bridges and train tracks. After that, Brown would hold the soldiers hostage with the help of the slaves he had just liberated. As this was happening, news of Brown's raid would spread and people from all over would flock to help him. While all of this was happening, Harriet Tubman, who Brown spoke to while he was in Mass, would tell slaves about Brown's raid, and they would flock to help him as well. Brown's plan was foolproof. There was no way this plan could fail. On October 16th, 1859, Brown and the boys went to Harper's Ferry. They attacked in the middle of the night, like ninjas. They cut the telegraph lines and secured the railroads. Then, they captured the armory. They used the slaves that they had just freed to keep the hostages in the armory. Brown and his men were also able to capture the colonel. Brown's plans were going swimmingly. At some point that night, two of Brown's men are guarding the railroad tracks. A railroad watchman bumps into Brown's men and they try to catch the watchman so he doesn't spill all their dirty little secrets to the others. They fail to catch the watchman, so he gets away and tells two other workers about Brown's men. The two railroad workers go to investigate and see Brown's men holding their rifles. Brown's men see the workers and think they are enemies due to the darkness. They fire at the workers mistakenly and kill one of them. The worker they shot ended up being black, so the first casualty of Harper's Ferry was actually a black man, which is very unfortunate considering the whole reason that they were there was to free black people. The irony. Also, the train passengers started firing at Brown's men with their own guns that they decided to bring on the train for some reason. America. Brown's plan was no longer going very swimmingly. Brown's men were able to catch more soldiers when they got up for their morning shifts. As men got captured, word started to spread of the rebellion. Unfortunately, it wasn't the slaves who caught wind of it like Brown hoped, but the Southerners who lived there. The civilians who lived in town started firing at Brown's men because America. Militias from surrounding towns started to show up and shoot at Brown's men as well. Our boy was in a bit of a pickle, but don't worry. People will soon run to Brown's aid just as he had planned, right? No, not really. Nobody really came to help Brown during this time. Harriet Tubman was supposed to spread the word of the raid, but apparently she's too busy farting around to hell. Brown's plan had seriously backfired. People didn't come running to his aid as he had hoped. He was like a kid whose birthday party nobody showed up to. This ended up being a huge blunder on Brown's end, which leaves him and his men completely outgunned. Civilians from everywhere are popping up and popping off on Brown. Brown now has a 5-star wanted level, which causes Robert E. Lee and his Marines to show up. For those of you who don't know, Robert E. Lee was a general who fought in the Mexican-American War and who would eventually go on to become a lead general of the Confederates. He would win major battles for the South. There are statues of this man. There used to be one in Charlottesville, Virginia, but it got taken down for racism. The neo-Nazis were very upset by this. The point I'm trying to make is that Robert E. Lee was no joke, and him showing up was bad news for Brown. It was like if the police decided to apprehend a jaywalker with a tank. Brown's army was pretty damn small, and the Virgins completely pulled down all the stops with this one. The Marines are able to break into the armory and Brown is arrested, but not before Brown's men are killed or captured, which includes 2 of his sons. All of this was Harriet Tubman's fault. Brown is then sentenced to death after an unfair trial. The governor of Virgin Land wanted Brown dead, so he was denied a federal trial. And on December 2nd, 1859, Brown was hanged, but not before leaving a lasting impact on the people. Brown had been a very passionate and compelling speaker. While yes, he was not loved by all Northerners, eventually they would start to lighten up to him. They sort of saw him as a folk hero. I think that they started to realize that Brown was kind of right. He served as foreshadowing for the Civil War. Brown was hell-bent on the idea that the institution of slavery could only be ended through violence. Then, Brown dies, and then 2 years later, the Civil War happens. Coincidence? I think not. I also think he was a little bit ahead of his time in terms of his views on civil rights. Brown truly treated African Americans as equal. It was even weird for abolitionists to treat black people the same way Brown did. Everything was still segregated back then, even in the North, and Brown didn't believe in that at all. He thought that they should have equal rights even before the Civil War, so props to him for that. While the North saw him as a hero, the South saw him as a crazed lunatic, which, I mean, they were kind of right. Have you seen a picture of the guy? Technically, Brown was a terrorist, but unlike Osama bin Laden, he's a pretty cool one. The South was terrified of him, because if word of his actions spread to the slaves, they might try to rebel. People say he was one of the catalysts for the Civil War, because he was heavily propagandized down south. He was heavily demonized by the press, and it made it seem like all Northerners were as crazy as Brown. Brown had many different raids and battles over the years, and yet the one in Harper's Ferry went very poorly. This guy had a lot of these little insurrections, but this one failed quite horribly. But that begs the question, what would have happened if he had planned the raid better? What would have happened if he was able to recruit more people? What would have happened if an army of people had come to help him as he had planned? What would have happened if he had been successful during the raid? Maybe the Civil War would have drastically changed, or maybe it wouldn't have happened at all. But I guess the world will never know. But what do you think? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll try to respond as much as I can. If you made it to this part of the video, I want to thank you. This video has been very crappy. If you want more videos like this, please like and subscribe. My name is Tejas the Almighty, and this has been a video that I have made for you. Also, I know the editing sucks. This is my first time, so leave me alone.